Welcome back, everyone. Well, today's not a reaction video, per se. From time to time, it's fun to take a look at some of the history trivia that is placed online in the form of quizzes. And this is actually, I just discovered this channel. The channel is actually called History Trivia Quizzes. So we play these from time to time. Number one, it's a great way to kind of flex the muscle and test our knowledge a little bit, especially when it gets into questions that might be outside of my own or your own particular historical comfort zone, because we all have those. But it's also a unique way to give me a chance to talk about some of the topics that I do know a little something about. So I'll put the link in the description to the original so you can check out History Trivia Quizzes. I'm also going to pin in the comment section a playlist to all of the other videos I've done over the past few years with similar topics where we've taken a look at history quizzes. So let's go ahead and dive into this one. It's History Quiz for Geniuses. Now we'll see whether that holds true or not. I expect I'd better miss some if this is meant to be for geniuses, because I am not a history genius. So let's take a look. Let's dive in. So what I'll try to do, I guess it depends on how the format is on this video, is I'll let it play right until it's going to reveal the answer, and then I'll pause. That way it gives you at least a little bit of time to try and figure it out yourself. But if you're worried about that, just as it's playing, just pause on your own and play when you're ready to continue.
History buffs, test your knowledge with today's quiz. If you like it, hit that like button, subscribe, and tell me how you did.
Was that a real guy, or was like that AI? Because he was so like firm and barely moving, and I'm really curious about whether that was a real human being. Oh, okay, so there's a bar down on the left that gives us the timing. So I'm going to let it play to the very end, and then I'll pause to give my answer and talk about it. All right, so this is Winston Churchill, the finest hour speech, which was not recorded as it was delivered. He actually recorded a version of it later on that we hear. But remember, Winston Churchill becomes Prime Minister of the UK on the day that France is invaded. On the day that really the phony war, as we call it, becomes a hot war, becomes a real ground war. I can't imagine a tougher test for a leader than coming to power in that exact moment. So yeah, it's Churchill B. By way of connection to these others, Eisenhower, of course, ends up the American, well, not the American, but the Allied commander-in-chief of all forces in the European theater. Kennedy was a Lieutenant JG, which is junior grade, in the Pacific, commanding a PT boat, which is a little small boat in coastal waters. Then, of course, we all know who D is. The last Queen of France. All right, so I believe these were all queens of France. Eleanor of Aquitaine ends up also Queen of England later on. Marie Antoinette, of course, is the famous queen that was executed. But I believe Louis Philippe is the last king of France, and that's in the 1840s. And Maria Amalia, I believe, was his wife. So I'm going to go with C on this one. That's incorrect. No, that's wrong. That is History Quiz for Geniuses. You have to actually get the answer right. Let's look this up to be sure. There you go. Maria Amalia Teresa of Naples and Sicily, 1782 to 1866, was Queen of the French by marriage to Louis Philippe I, King of the French. She was the last Queen of France. I even looked in the comment section, and everybody was bragging about getting 10 of 10, but nobody mentioned that point, so I had to get in there and comment for them and let them know that that one was wrong. Okay, we can continue now. Yeah, so I don't remember a whole lot about this day. I was around. I was 10 years old at the time. It's Black Monday. The decline in the fall. I don't think those are specific date type things. The Second Depression. There actually was something we called the Great Depression, which happened actually in the 19th century. And it was called the Great Depression until the one we now call the Great Depression replaced it as the Great Depression. But this has nothing to do with that. This is Black Monday. It was a stock market crash. This one's not real genius, I don't think. I think probably most people know this one. So Ramses the Great is Ramses the Second of Egypt. He's right in that kind of middle part of the Egyptian dynasties where you have a bunch of pretty powerful and influential rulers. It's like the 17th, 18th, 19th dynasties right in there. I'm going to know a lot more about this when I go to Egypt in 3 weeks. I'll be studying up between now and then, but it's definitely Egypt. And he was not the Pharaoh of the Exodus. I'm starting to question the genius of the person who made this quiz. The only answer here would be Australia, because I don't believe Canada, Spain, or Italy was a place that Britain was doing transportation. It's actually what they called it. They would call it sentencing you to transportation as a way of taking convicts. But I think it ended in the 1840s. I don't think it was starting in the 1840s. Pretty sure they were transporting prisoners to Australia in the late 18th century, so the late 1700s. All of this is to say, be careful what you believe on YouTube videos, because just because it says it's true doesn't mean it is. And I'm getting on my soapbox a little bit here. That includes me. And if for some reason I say something, because understand, I'm doing reaction videos, so I'm not going and studying up on these topics before I do the videos. I'm not watching the video first and making notes and then coming back and doing the reaction. It's all organic. It's all happening live off of knowledge that I've gained in the past. So occasionally I misremember something that I read 25 years ago. And if people point that out, and usually our community is really good at pointing those things out when they catch them, I will pin a comment about that to let you know there's a correction. So always, whenever you watch one of my videos, look for a pinned comment. If there's a correction to be made, it'll be there. So this is Athens. I believe that, I don't know if San Francisco has ever hosted an Olympic Games. I know Los Angeles has several times, but it's definitely Athens. I think we can rule out 3 of these pretty easily. It's definitely Polynesians. I don't think the Romans were in Hawaii. Yeah, I feel like these aren't that hard. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. So these are all, well, 3 of the 4 were Civil War generals. George Armstrong Custer, at the time he died at Little Bighorn, had reverted to his peacetime rank. In other words, not volunteer rank. You understand, this happened in the Civil War. It happened in World War II. It happened in World War I. Anytime the U.S. Army has had to rapidly expand for a major war, like the Civil War, World War I, World War II, there are 2 different ranks. You have your regular Army rank, and then you have your volunteer Army rank, or your wartime rank. So, for example, Custer is promoted to brevet major general. I think he was a full brigadier general in the volunteer army during the American Civil War. But after the Civil War, he reverts to a peacetime rank of lieutenant colonel. George S. Patton during the First World War, I think he makes full colonel. But then he reverts to captain after the war. Because you're going from, World War II, you had 15, 16 million people in the military. And then after the war, you're demobilizing almost all of that. And so you don't need all the officers that you had. But the answer here is George Armstrong Custer. And because he had been a general, he was often called General Custer, even though he was technically a lieutenant colonel at the time he was killed. Funny thing, well, no, Sheridan wasn't. I was going to say 2 of these guys were born in Ohio, so take a drink. George S. Patton, of course, his grandfather was a Civil War general. Phil Sheridan lived in Ohio, but I don't think he was born here. Gilder. Okay, so before joining the Euros, France had the franc, Germany had marks or Deutschmarks, Sweden had, was it like a kroner, something like that? It's the Netherlands, is the guilders. The Akashi Kaikyo Bridge opened in which country? I mean, it's got to be Japan, right? It's Japan. Okay, that was interesting. Let's take a look at another one of theirs and see if we can find something else about history. All right, so this one just came out 18 hours ago, so let's see how it goes. See if we can keep our perfect streak alive here. I really think that guy's AI. All right, we're going to need to get a little bit harder because obviously we all remember the Cuban cigar crisis of 1962. It's the Cuban Missile Crisis. Fascinating time in history. One of the reasons that I have a ton of respect for John F. Kennedy, because I think that was a minefield of a situation. And from all indications, he seems to have handled it perfectly. Oh, I remember this so well. My goodness. So this was, I graduated high school in 1995. This is one of the most memorable events of the first 20 years of my life, historically, is the O.J. Simpson case. So if you're not familiar with this, first of all, O.J. Simpson, superstar athlete, Heisman Trophy winner, Hall of Fame player, running back, played for the Buffalo Bills. And then he has a movie career afterwards. He's in movies like The Naked Gun. He's one of the main characters in that. And super famous guy. He does a lot of commentary on TV. Imagine, to put it in perspective, imagine if tomorrow it broke in the news that, I don't know, Saquon Barkley was suspected of killing his wife. Or think of somebody who just recently retired. I don't know, but that's the level we're talking about here. And he went on this incredibly famous trial. They called it the trial of the century, and had this dream team of lawyers and all this stuff. But it all began with the aftermath of his ex-wife and her friend being stabbed to death. Him riding around with one of his buddies in a low-speed chase down an LA freeway with like dozens of cop cars following behind him. The whole thing was broadcast live on the news at a time when the 24-hour cable news cycle was a brand new thing. It was a crazy time to be alive. So yeah, it's O.J. Simpson. Aha. All right, so I don't know that any of these except one even were a North Korean supreme leader. They should have at least put like other North Korean leaders like Kim's father and grandfather, but it's D, Kim Jong-un. You had Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-il. I remember this too, 1997. Just late August of 97. Man, this is seared into my memory as well. This was in Paris. She was with Dodi Fayed, who was the guy she was seeing at the time. This was after she and then Prince Charles had gotten divorced, and they were being followed by paparazzi. There's an accident that happens in a tunnel, and Dodi's killed instantly. She survives, but only briefly, dies at the hospital not long after. Crazy. Clearly, Lenny Kravitz was the grandson of Genghis Khan. Yeah, it's Kublai Khan. Mao Zedong, we're talking about a 20th century figure there in China. Marco Polo, Italian, I think. Definitely not the grandson of Genghis Khan. What big stringed instrument still existing today was played in ancient Egypt? What is the purple? What the purple? The hurdy-gurdy? Come on, at least give us real instruments. Make it interesting. It's a harp. Made it too easy. This is not for geniuses. Julio Cesar Turbay Ayala was the leader of which country in the 80s? Well, I mean, has there ever been a more Irish-sounding name than that, right? Although, I mean, to be fair, there have been leaders of Ireland with not Irish-sounding names, but no, it's Colombia. They got, I mean, at least for something like that, if you want it to be genius level, and yes, I'm being critical here. If you want it to be genius level, give us other viable options. Don't make it easy to deduce by just kind of weeding out the other countries by the name alone. You know, throw Mexico and Venezuela and, I don't know, Peru up there or something. Again, same deal here. Like, pick some other people with the name Malcolm. I mean, Malcolm X. So this is what Malcolm X did this. I believe it was to separate themselves from slave ancestry, because many people, especially African Americans, often their last name, their surname, comes from the family that had once enslaved their family. And those people, even after they gained their freedom, would often take their owners' names as theirs. I've always been interested in this topic, especially because being my family from Kentucky, I'm actually the descendant of both slave owners and enslaved people. And of course, in some cases, my enslaved ancestors were themselves the descendants of their owners. And I've always wanted to track down the descendants of some of the people that my family enslaved, and try to help them better understand their ancestry. But yeah, it's Malcolm X. What hidden manuscripts were found hidden? Which manuscripts? Was that 1960? I feel like that was in the 40s. We're going to have to look this up. It's the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Mr. Men books. All right, we need to look this up. I was sure this was in like 1947. Yeah, so the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered 46 and 47 through 1956. Of course, they date to the 3rd century BC to the 1st century. These are some of the oldest record of what we know today as the Bible. Some of these 15,000 scrolls and scroll fragments. Incredible find. One of the most important archaeological finds of the last 100 years. But definitely not in 1960. What's the name of the Russian jeweler who became famous? Oh, yeah. So, again, this is one of those ones where not real familiar with Paul Stohr, but Johannes Gutenberg, of course, is famous for the Gutenberg Bible and bringing, or at least popularizing, the printing press in Europe. Jean-Francois Champollion was one of the people who was crucial in unlocking Egyptian hieroglyphics. The answer here is Peter Carl Fabergé eggs. Okay, that was interesting. So, yeah, I have a hard time recommending this channel, obviously, because just in the 2 quizzes we just looked at, there's a number of mistakes there. But again, it's interesting. It gives us something fun to talk about. And if you want to talk more about any of the topics that we just discussed in those 2 quizzes, use the comment section below. Let's learn history together. Thanks for watching.